I think there's a lot of people who are actually scared. They're scared to do anything that's different, or they're scared to change. They love, we see the building industry sort of controlled by order. You know, they love order. They don't have order. It's not a go. It's people with you know, business owners are scared. Their management teams are scared, and it just flows through. You know, they don't want to change things too much. They're frightened.
I think they concentrate too much on having people around them that align their thoughts with what they are, rather than looking at people that have different ideas.
Yeah. I mean, we find there's too much time spent in things like, you know, the business case has got to be the worst thing ever invented in history. It's like, do one when you know what you're doing, but when you don't know what you're doing, prototype and test. So you can put the right number in the business case, not just go, 25% conversion rate, or we guess, because that's what happens. You just get an account together with an Excel spreadsheet, put 600 guesses in and go, wrap it up in a nice PowerPoint. You go, oh, look, we're all certain now. You know, it's like crap. If you haven't ever done it before, prototype and test. And again, I think you were sort of talking about this notion of innovation, because innovation comes with risk, but you can manage it by, you know, fail fast, fail cheap, prototype, test, learn by doing, and then once you've learned, do all the business cases you want. But we see that this sort of fallacy of certainty by doing a lot of planning when you don't know what you're doing is a killer of innovation.
I'd just like to pick up on that point about surrounding yourself with like people. One of the problems we have with the way we frame up industry groups is they become protective rather than innovative, because they're all like-minded and they look after whoever they represent. I was involved in setting up green building councils in various places. The one point of difference with green building councils is they have a diversity of representation. By their constitution, they can't have all architects or engineers. There's a builder, there's a building owner, there's a developer, there's an engineer, there's an architect. That's the only way you get innovation happening, is people who don't all benefit from the same outcome. So, I'd be hugely supportive of the view that the more diverse opinions you get around the table, the more creative you get.
We want more of your comments and questions, and so we can all hear it, there's mobile microphones around. Thanks.
There's such a big take-up of, in the physical environment, of collaboration, so reducing petitions and increasing our collaborative work environments and meeting spaces and things like that. Why do you think there is such a big reluctance to the online format of that? Is that, and even if you look at examples like Google pulling out of China because of the risk of, I guess, security via the internet, is that the big reluctance you think organisations have to, the online sort of social networking environment?
So the reality is there's no reluctance, because everyone's using it. It's just that organisations, I didn't invent it. It's almost like I won a global award recently from Forrester for the work I did in the bushfire community of Flowerdale. We won the best use of social media for social impact. But interestingly, in a bushfire community, when I say, hey, we should set up a blog, oh, what's that? Oh, it's this. Oh, cool. They didn't do a business case, a risk assessment, a security review. They just did it. They focused on outcomes. But when you get CIOs who come in and sort of say, come to me, I want to do this, I want to set up a blog. Oh, well, you've got to go and do a business case. Oh, cool, you do a business case, good, that's going to cost you 200 grand, and wait 2 years for it, or go to Blogger, set one up yourself and just do it offline. And I've coined a phrase called CIO bypass, which is, you guys can worry about all that shit yourselves, we'll go and set up a Yammer network. We rolled out Google Wave in Deloitte. The IT guys freaked out. We said, doesn't matter, we're supporting it through Yammer, so you won't get any calls, anything like that, where Deloitte Australia is the most active user of Google Wave in the world. I believe in outcomes-based computing. People issues pretending to be technology issues have always been a problem. So, follow the swarm, follow the user base. If the user base are using it, it's like us, We've had an open internet access policy, everything except we banned gambling and porn in 2004, but I got gambling back quickly because how can you run a workplace if you can't have a punt? Ridiculous. So, yeah, and I got porn back for a while because I got asked to investigate some stuff around adult shop by ASIC. But the point is, it's your user base is using it. In Canberra, you see people take their own computer into work and the office computer because everything's banned, but everything they want to use, so they just bring their own computer, or you bring one of these things. So if you want to use Twitter in the workplace, well, cool, use Twitter